Hello there, part 5 of the Dubstep tutorial series. We've made our drums, and in the last episode we kind of polished them up a bit and made them sound a little bit better. So let's give it a listen. I just wanted to say quickly that at this point I have no idea at all what this tune's going to sound like. It's not about sort of making a tune that everyone likes. I just wanted to sort of make it on the fly and give you some hints and tips about how to make the sort of heavier style dubstep. So with that in mind, I'll show you a bit about the notes I'm going to be using. We've got C natural, C sharp, E flat, F natural, G sharp and B flat. And the reason I'm using that scale is it's got a lot of possibility for dissonance with the C and the C sharp next to each other, which is a sound that was kind of made popular by people like Dr. P. Bit of a latency problem there. And also every now and again I'll be throwing in an F sharp, which I just used then because it sounds pretty good. So I've got an instance of Massive here for my pad sound, which is the first synth we're going to be making. Just initialize it quickly. I'm using Massive because it seems to be everyone's sort of go-to synth at the moment. I mean, it's really powerful. I love the synth, but just for accessibility, I'm going to be using it for every synthesized sound I make. So just a quick overview of Massive. We've got 3 oscillators here which create the sounds that you can find in this little menu. You can use the whole spectrum. You can just use certain aspects of the spectrum or a formant of the spectrum. You've got a modulation oscillator here which you can change phases, use a bit of a ring mod there, FM, although the FM doesn't work very well. 4 LFOs or performers and 4 envelopes. You've got your filters which take parts out of the sound and you can move those around to create some effects. And you've got some effects here, classic effects like reverb, chorus. So, a pad, the basic characteristics of a pad sound is a long and evolving amp envelope. So it takes a long time to come in and it takes a long time to go out, so that when you're changing chords, the 2 chords overlap. So we'll start making some sounds here. I'm going to start with a square wave because, I mean, when it comes to square and saws, I always go to squares for warmth and saws for brightness. And in a pad, I think a lot of warmth is a good idea. So I'm going to take the intensity down just to reduce the piercingness of it. About there, sounds good. It actually sounds good morphing between a square and a saw for an evolving sound. So I'm going to use, because I want it to carry on going backwards and forwards, I'm going to use an LFO on this. You can see it's going backwards and forwards, but it's a bit too fast and sharp. It's sharp because it's partly using this LFO waveform, which is obviously very harsh and sharp like that. So we're going to move it all the way to the sine oscillator for a smoother sound, and then turn the rate down. Cool. I always turn, once I've made a sound that I like, I turn the oscillator off so I can clearly hear the next one I'm going to make, which we use Digicook. Yeah, that sounds nice, and it sounds good the whole way through the wavetable. So what I'm going to do is use an envelope to take it from here to there. The attack in this case is how long it's going to take from for the envelope to go from here all the way back round, and then this decay section is how long it's going to take for it to go back down, and the level of decay is where it's going to go back down to. So I'm going to wait for it to go back round there and then change this to find a sound I like. We've got the thickness in the square oscillator, so I'm going to use this nice thin sound at the end. And just to keep it going a little bit, I'm going to use a loop at the end, so just put loop to infinite, and I'm going to find something. Yeah, I quite like that. Actually, that's quite good as well. So I've chosen two loops in the morph section. I'm going to use this to morph between them. Actually, I quite like it this way. See what that sounds like? It's quite cool. Next oscillator. Yeah, that's alright. Does it sound too similar to Digi? Yeah, it does a bit, so what I'm going to do is take this one down. No, I'm not. Yeah, I like that. I'm going to use the same LFO as on our square wave here, just to move it backwards and forwards at the same rate. But if you see this green section and the grey section, that dictates which side it moves to first. So you can see the green section's right, the grey section's left on this, so I'm going to reverse it on this side just for a bit of, so it changes a little bit more. Sounds alright. I mean, one of the important things in pads is to make the sound morph over time. And one way to do that is to create phasing in the synth. One way to create phasing is to detune one oscillator against another. Sounds quite nice. I'm going to add a little bit more phasing with the modulation oscillator here. Right, so it sounds quite good here. I'm going to use an LFO to change this phase and slow it right down. Detune the phasing a little bit to create a bit of extra movement. Slightly too loud, I think, so I'm going to turn that down. There's a bit of an annoying LFO sound in there, and I'm not sure which oscillator it is. Oh, it is this one. Okay, it's because of that. I don't quite like that. So I'm going to assign the same LFO that I'm using for the phasing to the wavetable position. So it morphs slower like that. Cool, I like that. Try this down an octave. Yeah, that's quite nice. Feedback is, I use this in almost every synth I make. It basically feeds the signal back into itself, which makes it a lot thicker. You can go a bit overboard. You can actually create some really good, instead of using a square or a saw wave for a really thick bass, you can use the feedback knob on a sine wave I'll probably show you that in another tutorial actually. Bit of white noise in the background, blend it with the colour knob. Just to add a little bit of thickness and sort of lo-fi sound. Right, where are we going to go next? I'm going to use some effects next, so because they're going to change the sound most drastically, so I can properly sort of shape what it's going to sound like. Chorus. You can sometimes get some really good effects by moving the offset of the chorus. Sounds a bit too rough in this case. Yeah, so I'm going to leave it like this. And some reverb I think will sound nice. Turn the size up, dry wet down, right vents down. Sounds quite cool. Now I'm going to introduce a little bit. Oh, actually, I'm going to rough it up with a sample and hold. Good. And yeah, next some filter movement. There's quite a lot of options here: low pass, high pass. I'm going to use double notch. A double notch filter is, so this is a notch filter where it takes a notch out of the sound. A double notch is obviously when there's two notches by the side of each other and they move sort of linked together. I think the other filter I'm going to use is a band reject, which is, so this is a band pass where this section of the spectrum is allowed through the filter and this section is filtered out. So a band reject is when this section is filtered out and this section is allowed through. So the double notch sounds like this. So I'm going to move that with an LFO. I've got LFO 7 here. Sounds quite nice in this section, so I'm going to move it slightly up here. I find when you're creating sounds which have a lot of movement in, it's a lot better to not use synced LFOs because it changes in relation to the beat, whereas a synced LFO will always be the same from beat to beat. That sounds quite nice, but I want it to come down initially and filter in on itself. Perfect. Band reject, let's take the mix of the filters down so we can hear just the band reject by itself. Yeah, it's cool around here. Sounds good. I'm going to use a different LFO on this one to this one so it again creates more movement. See what the line mix together. Alright, join me in part 2 where we'll be finishing off the pad in Massive and then editing a bit in Ableton. Alright, thank you.